What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Happy Tuesday, and lots going on here today on this show. We have baseball signings to talk about. We have 11 games in the NHL. We may hit in on the NBA, probably not. Tomorrow's a busy day in the NBA, so maybe we can save it for tomorrow. We're going to hit up the fantasy football waiver wire just a little bit. In case you missed yesterday's show, we will preview last night's game between the Rams and the 49ers, and we will talk buy lows and sell highs, of course, some shot props and some NHL picks for you a little bit later on. If you're hanging out with us, we appreciate you live here on the YouTube channel over at FTN Network. And if you're watching the replay here, whether it's at FTN Fantasy or FTNBets.com or just on our YouTube page, you have any questions, please leave them there. I'll always circle back and address those questions. I'd love to know which players you're considering dropping today. I meant to tweet that out. It's always pretty good to get some interaction with some people out there just to see what players they're thinking about dropping. It usually it gives me an idea of which players I want to target. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the most added and dropped and the most traded players in fantasy football with Tino. Tino's going to join me in a little bit because I wanted to get his thoughts on a couple things. Some things are happening here today. We got our guy George, 3 Putts for Par, hanging out. Cracks open Molson Ice. We got Tino, producer, hanging out as well. There's not enough Labatt's to help me talk about the Mets. Dude, we will talk about the Mets just a little bit here today. Some massive news in Major League Baseball before we came on. It's Noah Syndergaard. Remember him, Thor? Remember how good he used to be? Well, he signed a 1-year, $21 million deal with the Los Angeles Angels here this morning. I mean, pitching is something that the Angels have needed for years. There's not enough time in the day to talk about the amount of injuries that the Angels have had over the past few years. Honestly, I think off the top of my head, because yes, I do root for this Halos team, I think they've had 15 or 16 Tommy John injuries over the last 6 years, since 2015, 2016. Honestly, there's just so many. There's been so many injuries. They've had a hard time finding pitchers. You know, drafting them's been a hard time. They spent, I should know this. I know that every one of their draft picks last season, it was double-digit draft picks, were spent on pitchers. That's how hard up they are for pitching. I mean, they have Trout. They obviously got Ohtani. They spent a bunch of money on Rendon near the end of his, I would say near the end, but he's on the wrong side of 30. They spent a lot of money on bats. The offense has been good for the past couple years, but pitching has been a big issue. Man, this is a huge gamble. I know it's 1 year, $21 million. It would be good for Noah Syndergaard, really, to get $21 million. He's pitched 2 innings in the last 2 seasons. 2 innings in the last 2 seasons. His fastball velocity took a big dip. I want to get Tino's thoughts on Noah Syndergaard. I know he seems like a long time away from being one of the better pitchers in baseball. I don't think he can get back there. I think maybe, honestly, he's better suited for a bullpen role. It's a 1-year kind of prove-it deal. I think it's a decent gamble for the Halos. I mean, listen, it's not my money. What you need is pitching. Find some sort of arms or some arms in the bullpen and inside the rotation that could help this team out, because, I mean, they're running out of years here with Trout. That's all you always hear. I mean, Trout, you're wasting years with Trout. You're wasting years now with Ohtani, who's most likely going to be named MVP on Friday. Need to, find some sort of pitching. So at least they're trying to address it. So we'll get Tino's thoughts a little bit on what really Syndergaard has to offer, not just from a fantasy standpoint, from a real life standpoint. I think the Halos will be very, very aggressive. Clearly, this is the start of it. They also give up a first-round pick to get Syndergaard and spend that $21 million on him. Again, with a lot of question marks surrounding him, but the potential and the upside is certainly there. So we'll see. We'll get Tino's thoughts on how he feels about Syndergaard and what he could offer, maybe what the Mets are going to do here. It does sound like Billy Epler is going to be the new GM in town for New York, another former Angel guy that did absolutely nothing with the Halos. He got Ohtani. I mean, he was scouting them for years, so there was a relationship there, and thank you for that, and I'm sure a lot of Halos fans will agree. Thanks, but he did nothing else. Honestly, he didn't do anything. He didn't try to acquire pitchers. He didn't really grab any bullpen arms. This is what this team has needed for years now. For years. They made the playoffs once with Trout and the best offense in the game at that moment, and they were bounced in 3 games against the Royals because they had no pitching, right? I mean, they were throwing C.J. Wilson out there, and they could only give him 1 inning because he was a gas can, and that's what it's been. In the Angels nation, that's what it's been for a few years. I'm getting off track here. Jose Barrios, 7 years, $131 million extension with the Blue Jays. There's an opt-out, according to Jeff Passan, after year 5 and a limited no-trade clause. You know, this was a massive deal, and Austin Martin, who was flipped at the deadline. You know, the Jays, it's what they needed pitching. I mean, they got a lot of nice bats inside their lineup. You know, Barrios was pretty good for them in his 12 starts. 2 runs or fewer in 6, 3 or fewer in 10. He was lit up once. He gave up 6 in another outing. He gave up 4, but for the most part, he was pretty good. I think he's slightly overrated. I think he's a good pitcher. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Keeps the ball on the ground for the most part. You know, he's cleaned up some of the walks. There were some highs and some lows over the past couple of years with his command, but this is something the Jays needed to do. They needed to lock him up, right? I mean, because, you know, they gave up a good prospect to get him, and also this is what they needed. They need some pitching. The Jays are on the rise, man. They're one of my favorite teams in baseball. I think they have a lot to offer from a fantasy standpoint. I'll be interested in their futures as well. I had them at 30-1 to win the World Series. Obviously didn't get that, but they were really close to getting to the dance. That's really all you need. So we'll talk a little bit more baseball later on. There's some big names out there like Carlos Correa, Corey Seager. I think Starling Marte is available too. I read that the Astros were knocking on the door there. Astros are going to be players, especially if they don't bring back Carlos Correa. There's going to be a lot of money there to be had. So 11 games in the NHL. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And let's just break right now. We'll talk about last night's Rams and 49ers game. I'm sitting here as of today, and I don't know who the best team in the NFL is. I don't know. I got futures on teams. I got futures on MVPs. Tomorrow, I want to dive into MVPs a little bit deeper, but we can touch on it a little bit today. I'd like to hear from you guys. Who do you think is the best team in the NFL right now? Like, the Bills are favored to win the Super Bowl. Are they the best team? I don't know. They haven't played New England yet. I think the Patriots are going to give them a good go in these 2 games coming up here. I think they could win the division. And who's the MVP? A couple weeks ago, it was like, yeah, it was Kyler. Kyler's rolling. Then it was Stafford. Stafford didn't do anything yesterday. He looked pretty mediocre for the second straight week. Who's the MVP? Who is your MVP after 10 weeks? And who do you think has the best shot to win the Super Bowl? We'll talk about all of that, some buy lows and some sell highs. And last night, we'll talk about Odell Beckham Jr. and those Rams and the 49ers and how good they look. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Those hanging out live, if you have any questions, please hit me up. I'd love to get to them. I'd like to know which players you're considering dropping today in fantasy football when your waivers do run, whether it's this evening or tomorrow night. We do have one trade question here from Smokey the Cat. Smokey the Cat says, hello, should I trade Dalvin for Zeke and T. Higgins? I have Pollard and Madison on my bench. Do it immediately. It kind of cuts off there. What's going on with my camera these days, man? I got to get my stuff together here. Yes, you got to make that trade. Leave the show. Go make the trade. Pause the show if you're watching the replay. I know you're live. Go make that trade. Honestly, trading Dalvin for Zeke and you get T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is a great buy low candidate. I don't love the Bengals schedule, but you know what? The bye week is out of the way. I think that is significant. That part of trades always could kind of throw a wrench in those deals. Like, is a player on a bye? Do they go on a bye? When does that bye happen? Does it happen week 14 before fantasy football playoff time? That's pretty tough. So the Bengals have that bye. They've already had it already. I think that's a great trade. And then, You're keeping Madison too. He's got Pollard, Madison, so he's trading Dalvin for Zeke. You got the Dallas backfield kind of handcuffed there. You got that for the stretch run. If anything happened to Zeke, you got yourself protected there. You know what? I would probably. I mean, you could even make it a big blockbuster. You can get Madison in there and probably get something else in return. I'm surprised that the guy getting Dalvin, doesn't want Madison. But nonetheless, I mean, you have yourself another solid bench piece that if anything happened to Dalvin, I mean, you're going to have yourself 2 top 10 running backs come fantasy football playoff time. So thanks for the question, Smokey Cat. And I would make that deal. I would make that deal immediately. Let's talk about last night a little bit here. So I'm completely wrong about the Rams. They got smashed 31-10. So I was wrong on that spread. We had a lean to the under, but we didn't give it here on the show, so we can't take credit for that. Overall, it was 3 for 3. We got Cooper Kupps and 7.5 grabs. George, you didn't jinx that one, although he did have a couple drops, some brutal drops. Listen, Stafford was bad yesterday, but his guys didn't really help him out. Cooper Kupp had a couple drops, 2 on third down. Tyler Higbee had 2 drops on third down, brutal drops too, which would have extended drives, but those guys were dropping footballs. Maybe life without Robert Woods was a little bit more of a challenge than I think maybe the Rams thought or myself. I didn't like it originally. I liked the pick. I back in the pick. I mean, I was wrong on the pick. But honestly, I thought that they would have to adjust a little bit with Woods. I thought that Odell Beckham Jr. would get a little bit more play. I mean, dude played 15 snaps yesterday. I mean, I was not surprised that I was looking everywhere first catch props. I really was. I thought that they would get him involved right away, and it was the first passing play. Boom, a little kind of slant quickly, out route, 5-7 yards, boom, he's got it, catch. And then he didn't really do anything after that. He had 3 targets, 2 grabs. So we didn't get his receiving yard prop. He only had 18 yards. We needed another 10.5 or so. I think we got a 27.5. And then we did get Van Jefferson over receiving yards, but he had a couple bad drops too. I mean, he's had an opportunity here over the past couple weeks, and he's dropped passes a couple that should have been touchdowns. He dropped one in the end zone again for the second straight week. I'm in back of my head, I'm counting 3 end zone drops that he would have touchdowns. I have a lot of Van Jefferson, so I watch closely when it comes to Jefferson and some deep league stuff. I've been stashing this guy all year. I still think he's a hold. I believe that he is going to be the number 3. Potentially, we see OBJ get more play, more reps. They're on bye this week, maybe more familiarity with each other. Stafford, they were saying yesterday that he only threw 2 passes to him in stride. They were saying that on the broadcast. By the way, the Manning cast is phenomenal. I don't know what I've been doing for a few weeks. I've been missing out. Those guys were great last night. They were awesome. The way that Peyton breaks it all down, the 4th down play where San Fran went for it and they basically iced the game away. They could have punted it away. They called the timeout and then they went back out there, and I thought maybe, they'll just take the delay game penalty because they can't call another timeout, and they decided just to go for it. Peyton didn't like the play to go for it, but he called the play. I mean, that guy's so sharp. I like Draymond on the broadcast. I like Phillip Rivers on the broadcast. Just hearing what those 3 quarterbacks, their mindset, what they look for when they go to the line, audibles that they're calling, their kind of like game plan when they get inside the red zone. All 3 of them talked about how tough it is to convert inside the red zone. We saw that with the Rams yesterday as well. But the Manning cast is phenomenal. I've really, really enjoyed those 2 together. And it's nothing against the regular dudes on ESPN. They're fine. They were talking about analytics yesterday I just thought that was funny, them talking about analytics. So they're just completely, I don't know. They were on like crazy rants about analytics. And I think Levy with the touchdown call was like, that's why the analytic community is not the community to target or to buy into or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but I mean, it had nothing to do with it. The analytic community probably wanted the Niners to go for that, and they scored that touchdown. Nonetheless, the Manning cast is great, but back to the game here for a little bit. So we went 3 for 3 overall in the picks. We didn't get the Rams, we didn't get OBJ, and we didn't get Elijah Mitchell receiving yards, but man, we definitely got his 14.5 carries. He had 27 carries for 91 yards. We got the Van Jefferson receiving yards and the Kupp catches, as I mentioned. I was sour last night. I'm a little sour again this morning. I had Matt Gay, just needed 6 fantasy points for me to move on in my home league and get the W in an ugly fashion, and he only had 5. He had the kick at the end, which I'm sure people were on the wrong side of that. There was really no reason for the Rams to kick that field goal at the end of the day, but there was what happened at the end of the first half with that fake field goal? What was that? I mean, Sean McVay, is he trying to outsmart Kyle Shanahan? He's really pushing to try to beat Shanahan. Shanahan's won 5 straight games against him now. There was no need of that either. either. If you're going to go for it with Stafford, or take the points on the road. Then at that point, you're down 21-10. And you're still down 2 scores, but you just come away from an ugly first half with at least 10 points. It's just, these coaches, man, I thought they should have taken the 3 points. Clearly, I'm a little sour and I'm a little bitter. I didn't get those fantasy points from Matt Gay, but I think that was a turning point in the game. I mean, they could feel better about themselves going into the half, but let's give the 49ers a lot of credit. They played really good football, and when they're at full health on offense, which is something we haven't really seen from them this season, I mean, they're rolling, right? You got Kittle, who looked great at the start. I mean, an awesome first drive from the Niners, getting Kittle involved and running the rock. I mean, it looked really, really easy against a good defense in the Rams. Deebo Samuel continues to ball out. This guy's a league winner. He's going to go down as a fantasy football MVP. Cup has shown us this before. He's gone on runs. He has 2 seasons, I believe, with double-digit touchdowns. He's got a 1,000-yard season on his NFL resume. What Deebo Samuel is doing and how they use him, man, that guy is a player. They use him out of the backfield. I think he had like 30-some-odd rushing yards. He had a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown. I think he had 97 yards. I got it here. Yeah, 97 yards and 36 rushing yards. He's second in the NFL among wide receivers in fantasy points. He's right there behind Cooper Kupp. He's right there with Hill. Hill had the big game too, 177. Tyreek. Debo's got, he's third in fantasy points, 171, and he's got 979 receiving yards, which is second in the NFL. And he's a weapon. Yeah, he really is a weapon. Pretty impressed with him. But the Niners offense looked good. They're getting some guys back on defense. They played pretty good yesterday. Division game, those ones are tough. I still don't believe in this team overall. I still don't think they're a playoff squad. They could go on a bit of a run here. We'll see. Obviously, having Kittle and Ayuk didn't do a whole lot, but having those 3 in Deebo and the run game that they've always been pretty good at is tough to stop when they get going. They run the play action, and they do a lot of good things on offense when they're at full health. But now I'm sitting here thinking, how good are these Rams? Like, how good are the Rams? I don't know. Like I said, I felt pretty good about them a couple weeks ago as a team. Like, we could maybe get this future. Like, they're really good. The NFC is pretty strong. Like, there's some really good teams. It's top heavy. The AFC, I think, is completely wide open. But I'm sitting here today, and I just don't know. I still think the Bucs are the team to beat when they're at full health. But a lot's happened with them over the past couple weeks. Bruce Arians called them a dumb football team. They've taken a lot of penalties. They're missing a lot of guys on offense and on defense. They've had some injuries. I do like this Rams team. Tino's going to say, and other people are going to say it too, it's OBJ. It's the curse, OBJ. I don't know. Maybe it is. But Robert Woods being down is significant as well. But here's the odds, and we'll address this here tomorrow. But Tino's going to make us a sharp board here for tomorrow. But for the NFL Super Bowl odds, the Bills are favored at 6-1, the Bucs at 650, the Rams at 8-1, the Dallas Cowboys at 8-1. I mean, they could be headed for first place in the NFC. It's very, very possible. Green Bay at plus 850, the Cardinals at 11-1, the Chiefs at 11-1, Tennessee, arguably the best team in football right now, they're at 12-1, the Ravens at 14-1, and then 2 teams at 25-1 with the Pats and the Chargers. Whew, man, I still think the Bucs, and I do like the Bills' path. A lot of these teams that I just gave you are all NFC teams, right? The Bucs, the Rams, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Cardinals. It's going to be a bloodbath to get through the NFC, where the Bills, it's not going to be easy to play the Chiefs, to play the Titans, who they already lost to, the Ravens they beat last year, but, the Pats are kind of trending up as well. But, I still think there's a little bit of value on the Bucs. As for the MVP, Allen's plus 250. We're not getting involved there. Brady's plus 350. Not either. I already have a Stafford and a Kyler. Kyler at like 24-1 and a Stafford at 14-1. So, I'm not going to double down on these guys. I think the long shot MVP may be 16-1 Patrick Mahomes. What if he just goes on a tear here in the last few weeks and he starts to do what he did last week? And then we're looking at this guy like, all right, he's doing it again. When everybody counted him out and they're rolling on offense, maybe they reel off 5 or 6 wins in a row. They win that division, and they're in the conversation. At least he is for an MVP. I think that's pretty good value at 16-1. We'll address all that tomorrow. Maybe get Tino's thoughts on it as well. Let's do another break, and then we'll do buy lows and sell highs in the third segment here. We'll combine them, and we'll also talk a little bit about the waiver wire and some quarterback streams. There's only 2 teams on buy. We got the Rams and the Broncos. So hopefully you're not in a pinch, but we will talk about some buy lows and some sell highs as well. So Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on a Game Plus Network. Smokey the Cat is back at it. I love it. He said he traded Daryl Williams for Amari Cooper, win or loss. Williams, yeah, he's coming off a pretty big game. He had 9 catches. I think he had 100 yards receiving, close to it. And he had a couple touchdowns. I think that's a win. We'll get to some buy lows here in just a second. Didn't know how much value Williams had with CEH potentially back. I think that's okay. I think that's fine. It seems like you're set at the running back position, right? You're gonna get Higgins, you're gonna get Zeke if you make that deal, give up Dalvin. I think that's fine. I kind of viewed Amari Cooper as maybe a sell high candidate with just Michael Gallup coming back, and there's a lot of moving pieces in Dallas right now, and they are a team that's, for the most part, they've leaned on the run. But you know what? CH is going to come back, and I had the conversation with Jake yesterday on All In Football. You can go back and watch that replay. You can also catch Jake's show over at Bets TV and a Game Plus Network, I believe Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 8 Eastern. We talked about Williams. He was saying maybe a 50-50 split. I was thinking about it a little bit more, and I don't know. I don't know if it'll be a 50-50 split. It may be when he comes back, and now Andy Reid said it's very likely that we'll see CEH back this week 11. But I don't know, man. Like, he is the better back. I know he's had some down games, but he had 100 yards, I think, in back-to-back games before he suffered that injury. He was starting to come around a little bit. I think that he gets the job back. I think it could be 50-50, Smokey the Cat week 11, but I think week 12, week 13, then they get maybe more CEH involved, and then maybe it's a 70-30. I mean, he was getting a big bulk of the work in the first few weeks. He just wasn't that productive, but I think that's a pretty good move. Yeah, I think Daryl Williams is a pretty good sell high candidate. Let's get to some buy lows here, Tino. You got the buy lows. There's a lot of other dudes here that, over at ftnfantasy.com, you can catch the free article there. You can see some of these other buy low and sell high candidates. So I got Daryl Henderson on here. This is something that I do every week. I always put somebody on that's, headed for a bye week. Plus Henderson, he hasn't been that great here over the past couple games. He's had fewer than 8 fantasy points in 3 of his past 4. He only has 16 carries in his last 2 games, 5 for 31 last night, but both of those games got out of hand. I still believe in this Rams team. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is a great add. We talked about in the last segment, Robert Woods leaving that team is a huge loss. It really is. But I think the offense is still going to run through, there are 3 studs in Cup, and OBJ is going to get more involved, and Daryl Henderson. Sony Michel got a little bit of play yesterday, but it really is Henderson. He got a big bulk of the carries. As I said, the last 2 weeks, I think, have really gone the wrong way, and it just hasn't suited a guy like Henderson. There's been some turnovers. There hasn't been a lot of sustained drives for the Rams, but I really do like the schedule. So you got the bye week this week for LA. Then you have Green Bay, Jacksonville, Arizona, Seattle, and Minnesota. It's okay. Those aren't phenomenal matchups, but they're not awful either. Obviously, the one against the Jags is really good. Green Bay's defense has been a lot better over the past few weeks. They played really good football. Arizona has been decent against the run, but they've given up some big chunk yard plays as well. And then Seattle, decent as well against the run, but they've also given up some high explosive plays this season. But for the thing with having Henderson up at the top here is this. I think I said this last week, and Henderson was available in a couple of my leagues, and I wanted to get him, but I just couldn't take on the bye week. I needed wins now, and that's the thing, where the Henderson owner, maybe, he's had a couple dead games here. Maybe they need a healthy body right now. We'll get to, in a little bit, we'll get to some backs that maybe you could flip and just package and get Henderson for a playoff run. If you're getting Henderson as your RB3, I think you're laughing. That's awesome. If you can get him for your flex, that's great. I think it's a good buy low. So just check on the Henderson owners, see where they are in the standings, and if they need a W. Other guys on this list, James Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, and we have Mike Williams and Russell Wilson in there. So for Robinson, I don't know if he could be had, but he has one of the best fantasy football schedules for running backs, in the second best for me anyways, looking at some of the matchups and some of the fantasy points against and teams that have given up a lot of runs, a lot of rushing plays. So he had a lot of rushing yards, rather. So Robinson last week, 12 for 51 and a touchdown. Not phenomenal. A touchdown saved his day, but he, started to trend up. The first quarter, he really didn't touch the field. He was coming off that heel injury, and then the second, a little bit more play, and then a lot of work in the third and the fourth quarter. Saved his day with the touchdown, but you got San Fran, Atlanta, the Rams, Tennessee coming up. But here's where it's really interesting come fantasy football playoff time. Week 15 against the Texans, week 16 against the Jets. Those are games that the Jags can control. Maybe they can run the football a little bit more. I really like James Robinson. DeAndre Hopkins has missed the last couple games. I would try to buy everybody in Arizona. This is James Conner coming off a dead game. He still found a way to find the end zone. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. I know Kirk and AJ Green have been sell-high candidates for me all year, but I'd be into acquiring those guys as well. So Arizona's lost 2 of the last 3. I've read reports that Hopkins and Kyler were really close to playing. They could have played, but they just thought, you know what, we're sitting pretty good here at 8-2 or whatever they are now. They were 8-1, and we're most likely headed for the playoffs. I think that these guys will get back into the lineup, and I think what you want is these guys for the playoff run. You got the bye coming up, Seattle in the bye, Chicago and the Rams, not great, not ideal. Detroit week 15, Indy week 16, Dallas week 17. Those are primetime matchups for wide receivers and for quarterbacks. And I think, these guys could be had. I mean, people may just be like, you know what, Hopkins not dealing with him again this week. Against Seattle, he may be, maybe questionable all week. Maybe won't play. And then you get the bye next week. So again, if you're sitting pretty comfortable in a playoff spot, go for it. Mike Williams, Brendan Staley, head coach of the Chargers, said injury hasn't been a factor. Dude had 471 yards in his first 5 games and 137 in his last 4. Pittsburgh this week, Fitzpatrick, maybe not playing. I think he landed on the COVID list. And then there's a couple other guys in Pittsburgh that have landed on the COVID list too. So it could be a decent matchup against the Steelers. Then Denver, Cincy, New York. The Giants, that is. KC week 15, Houston week 16. So good matchups. As for Wilson, I think he's just a great add for a super flex. If you're getting him as your second quarterback, the matchups are just okay. Arizona, Washington, San Fran. Houston is a good one. The Rams, Chicago. He gets Chicago at home. He doesn't have to go to Chicago. He clearly struggles in cold weather. He's never won at Lambeau ever. And he was never ever shut out before. So this is stocks at an all-time low. Now's the opportunity maybe to go out and acquire this guy. I think decent spots, but I wouldn't be getting him as my single quarterback. And maybe, maybe in a super flex league, the guy or the girl doesn't want to say, okay, here, I'll give you Russell Wilson. He's in the one quarterback in a single quarterback league. I think he's easier to get in a super flex, but I'd flip him for Cam. Tino, let's transition to some sell-high targets here. I'd flip for Cam. People love Cam. People are obsessed with Cam Newton. I have nothing against Cam Newton. I think, I've said some stuff on Anthem Sports and Entertainment before about Cam Newton a few years ago. I didn't like the way that he carried himself into the Super Bowl, and then he didn't take the loss. I didn't like the way that he took the loss. I understand in the Super Bowl you lose and you're upset about it, but the guy was dancing all year and everything was all gravy and this and that, and he just wouldn't even answer questions after the Super Bowl. I thought he was a little immature, but nonetheless, he provides some upside with his legs, and people like that. Jake said he's a top 10 quarterback for him, a QB1. He said that to me. I don't know, man. I don't agree with that. Jake's a super sharp guy. Sealy knows what he's talking about. He's one of the best rankers in the game. The rushing upside is there. The first touch, he had a rushing touchdown. The second touch, he had a passing touchdown. He's definitely going to be the quarterback. They paid him to be the starting quarterback. This week, there's reports that he may be more involved. He's starting this week against Washington. There's no question. He's starting. He's going to have a full week to practice with the squad. He's playing. He's starting. But I would make that swap. Just see, because people, like I said, really do like Cam. Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson, Mike Davis, and Jacoby Myers in there. For Antonio Gibson, I was a little on the fence because the matchups are pretty nice moving forward for Washington. I didn't think he was all that efficient last week. 24 carries, 64 yards. He did have a couple touchdowns. He went up against a really good rush defense in Tampa Bay, and they were up in that game, and they could rely on the run game. Even with the soft schedule coming up, I don't think there's a lot of games where Washington's just going to be able to rely on the run game. So I don't know. I view Gibson as a sell candidate. I would look to see if I can get something in return. Would I flip him for Daryl Henderson? Yeah, I would. I would make that deal, even knowing I'm not going to get Henderson in my lineup this week, and Washington's already had the bye. J.D. McKissick was still involved. Carolina this week, the 4th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but he does have Seattle, Las Vegas, Dallas, Philly. This is a couple good matchups in there for Antonio Gibson, but I view him as a sell. I could understand maybe going to acquire him as well if he's your flex. Don't buy him to be your RB2. Flex only. Ramondre Stevenson. So this is obviously always about context. Just want to check Tannehill, 35-1 MVP odds. Not bad, Tino. We'll talk about that in a little bit. For Ramondre Stevenson, there's no Damian Harris last week. It sounds like maybe Damian Harris is going to be out again this week. Thursday Night Football, short week against Atlanta. So we could see Stevenson rack up another 20 carries. He had 20 for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He caught 4 passes for 14 yards. He finished as a top 3 running back in fantasy football. Why would you sell that? His stock may never be higher. If you need somebody this week, you're rolling him out. You're not even thinking twice about trading this guy. But if you're already set at the running back position and you picked him up and maybe you didn't even play him and you're thinking, man, I don't know if I can play this guy this week. I got Joe Mixon coming back. Nick Chubb may come back off the COVID list. I don't know what to do here with Stevenson. Flip him. Flip him and get some players in return to help your team out and get more balance here. I think he's a big time sell high candidate because when Harris comes back, I think it's going to be a committee again. You got Harris in there, you got Brennan Bolden, and then for Jacoby Meyer, same sort of deal. Myers, you got a lot of different moving pieces in New England. Kendrick Bourne is, involved. Jacoby Meyer just had his second best fantasy game of the season. He just had a touchdown, but he's had sub-fantasy points in 7 of his 10 games. He only has 9 catches for 93 yards over his last 3. I think he's slightly overrated. The fantasy community likes him because of volume and targets, but, you got Nelson Aguilar who's sprinkled in a little bit, and Hunter Henry is definitely the number 1 option for New England inside the red zone when they don't run the football, and it's something that they really like to do. Plus, I don't really love this schedule. Got Atlanta this week, which is nice. Tennessee's okay, but then Buffalo, a bye. Indy is all right, but then Buffalo again. So you got to go Buffalo, bye, Indy, Buffalo. Buffalo week 16. I don't love it. I don't like it. I would flip Jacoby, and I would do it now. And I think you could sell high just on his performance. And that's it. Mike Davis. We can talk about Mike Davis when Tino jumps on here, but Cordero Patterson really is, it sounds like he's going to miss. I saw a report several weeks. I saw a report a couple weeks. It does sound like more than just a 1-week injury. He hasn't officially been ruled out yet, but I saw Mike Davis get flipped in my dynasty league for a 2nd-round pick. Now, you may not be able to get much in a redraft league. I think people may be thinking that, okay, here we go. It could be Mike Davis now. But it was Wayne Gallman last week. He had 15 carries for over 50 yards. He had a 21-yard catch. Gallman proved last year with the Giants when he filled in for Saquon that he could be a quote-unquote, I don't know, RB2 bell cow back, catching balls in the backfield, run the football. Mike Davis has given them nothing. I think what they realize is we've seen nothing from Mike Davis. We're done giving Mike Davis the ball. Like, how many yards does Mike Davis have here this season? Like, quick, let me check this out. Does he even have 300 yards? He's got 289 yards. I mean, 4 for 10, 9 for 44, 9 for 13, 4 for 18. He hasn't had double-digit carries since week 5. I think in a dynasty league, that's a great trade. Maybe you can just sell him on the fact that he's going to get more touches. Maybe people are sleeping on Wayne Gallman, but Wayne Gallman would be the pickup for me. I would ride Wayne Gallman, and I would try to sell Mike Davis. Look at the Cordero Patterson owner. Look to the Melvin Gordon owner who's on a bye this week. Look to the Daryl Henderson owner. Do you need somebody as a flex? Get whatever you can. Maybe it's a second defense, honestly. Maybe it's a second defense for week 13 or 14. Maybe it's just like a flex play for you. Or maybe in a dynasty league, a 2nd-round pick. Don't sit on these guys. Flip these players for other players who can help out people in dynasty leagues if you're rebuilding, unfortunately, if you are rebuilding. We'll bring in Tino here next. I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little baseball with him. Plus, we got some NHL picks, 11 games on the ice. So we'll talk picks and shot props as well. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Watch Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Had to bring in producer Tino Rodriguez _ on the Twitter machine. If you're looking for a great follow, and you're also doing, man, we don't really talk about your betting show. I mean, you come on here and you join me, and we kind of go back and forth on the multiple sports, some NBA, some baseball, some football. You're learning the ins and outs of hockey. You're gonna go watch the Devils play tonight. Unfortunately, no Devils action, but you have a betting show. You want to take the time to plug that? You and Benny are crushing it, man.
Yeah. So prop-wise, we're crushing it. We had a tough week the last 2 weeks. I'll get out in front of it. It's what we do here at FTN. We own up to it. But in our defense, it's been a terrible 2 weeks for a lot of people, most public gamblers over the last 2 weeks. But we will get better. We'll go up onward and upward. But yeah, we've been killing the props lately. Benny cashed on a Jamal Agnew touchdown. That's the type of content you don't get anywhere else. I think that 3-1 plus 330. I think he got that at. So yeah, no, good stuff. Thursdays and Fridays, we're releasing 3:30 here at FTN YouTube. So you can check it out. We also have the podcast version. But I'm happy to be here too, Meaney. You know, this is this is my show as long as you're along with your show as well. You know, I take ownership for this. I'm happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me as always.
We appreciate you. And you're rocking the Mets gear. Let's go, Mets.
Trying to.
Thoughts on Syndergaard? 2 innings pitched in the last 2 years, a little bit of a dip in velocity. 21 million for this guy. What do you think?
So my take is that Syndergaard hasn't pitched well in 5 years. Now, some people don't want to say that because he has pitched since 2019. Look, 2018 and 2019, his ERA went up. 2017, I think, was one of his more polished years, or 2016, 2017 was more of his polished years. He was sub 3. After that, it was onward and upward. 3.3, I think he had a 4. And then, you know, he hasn't pitched really in 2 years. It's a gamble. Obviously, we know what the player is. We know what the talent could be. But there's mixed reports, and I don't really know how to feel about this injury. I can really only look at this from a Mets perspective. And, you know, in hindsight, everyone wants to say, yeah, well, you couldn't just pay 2 point whatever million more or 3 million more just to get him, even though they extended the qualifying offer. But honestly, I don't think the Mets really wanted him all that bad to begin with. I think where the Mets are is not necessarily rebuilding, but they're trying to tear down kind of the pieces that they've had in place in 16, 17 and change the regime a little bit. I mean, we're changing a coaching staff, we're changing a GM, and it's just not working. You know, it's something that a lot of teams do. You try to ride the coattails of that one season that worked. And to be honest, it was kind of a flash in the pan. Cespedes leaded us to the World Series that year. And after that, it hasn't come together, right? And so our pitching staff has supposed to have been great the last couple of years, and it just hasn't been, whether it was injuries, underperformance, COVID, whatever it was, it's just not working. And, you know, as much as you want to keep the guys there to make it work, sometimes you can't be afraid to kind of tear it down and get new faces in there to see if it does work.
So you feel like Conforto's gone, right? He's going to be gone.
Well, they sent him a qualifying offer that he didn't accept as well.
He didn't accept it.
Yeah. So I'd expect the same thing.
Yeah, and then there's Marcus Strowman, who those north of the border and you know, at Anthem Sports and Entertainment are very familiar with. He could be gone too. He's a pitcher that I like. And what do you think about Epler as the new GM there? I mean, I don't know. He's experienced. Give him that.
Well, he's qualified for the job, so let's start there.
Yes.
That's good. He was a GM before.
Yes.
Look, the Mets had a position open that no one really wanted, and I think for them as an organization, there's been so much turmoil over the last year in terms of interim GMs and non-GM, you know, actual GMs that they brought in, and head coaches that, you know, in managers and Beltran that were managers, and a week later he wasn't, and just there's just so much going on. I think they're just looking for stability, and if there's one thing you can say about Epler is that, you know, he held it down in Los Angeles for a while. You know, you would know more about this than me, but for me, I'm looking for consistency at this point, right? I think we're just looking for something we can be sure of because, again, we had 3 GMs over the last year. We had 2 managers over the last 2 years. It's like, it's too much. It's too much. No one can win like that. And it's a testament to the talent that's on the team. But at the same time, I think the Mets are kind of finally looking at themselves in the mirror and they're realizing that they are the Mets, and it's time to change things up a little bit and get some new faces in here. And to be honest, I'm not totally against it. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm not totally against it.
Yeah, I mean, a change is not bad, right? I was a little hard on Epler earlier in the show, but he was okay. I mean, obviously he got Shohei for them, and that was a huge win. I just felt like he needed to do a little bit more with the pitching staff and with the bullpen. But they changed things pretty quickly there in LA. I was just looking to see if there was any other news breaking that we could chat before we got you out of here, and I just looked at Rap Sheet, and he quote retweeted John Morosi about Syndergaard starting with the Angels, and he had crying emojis. So I guess Rap Sheet's a Giants fan, or maybe he's an Angels fan, and he's like, oh goodness, but there was one comment on Syndergaard from Mason Burke on Twitter here. It says, I know his sample size was microscopic, but he was a few clicks lower on his fastball. Maybe it was just trying to keep control of his command, but it is alarming.
Well, and then
if I
also,
give you the over under 60 innings, would you take over 60? Like,
I mean,
just 60.
I want to say yes. Here's the thing I'm worried about is his breaking stuff as well. I mean, from what Andy Martino put out there, he was having trouble with his curveball as well. Now, obviously, everyone knows Syndergaard's a power pitcher, right? High hundreds. He's going to blow it past you. And he's tried to be that for the last couple of years, but it's led to a high ERA because he's forcing that fastball, turned into some early inning walks, and then he gets hit hard. So if he doesn't have the velo he thinks he has anymore and still tries to get it over the plate and he can't locate his breaking pitch, I mean, it's a pitcher's recipe for disasters. That's not just a Syndergaard thing, So you got to remember, I think, and again, I told you this before, Mets fans are losing their mind. They're like, it's Zach Wheeler all over again, completely different situations, the same injury, different years and landscapes. Syndergaard, like you said, hasn't pitched in 2 years, really. 2 years off Tommy John. And to give someone $21 million, Wheeler got a long-term deal for a reason. The guy was in Cy Young contention this year, right? It's just two opposites. And so Syndergaard has a lot to prove. It is definitely a gamble. The upside is there, but without seeing the proven track record over the last 2 years and what we had seen in the years before, I think his best year before that, or the year before that in 2019, he had a 4-something ERA and he was getting roughed up. So, like, I just don't like that overall body of work to pay someone $21 million. I know they were going to give him 18, but we're talking $21 million. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. It's a lot of money, yeah. And I think from the Angels side of things, I mean, they're just super desperate, as I mentioned earlier. They have to get some sort of I don't think they're done. I think they're going to try to acquire a couple other arms as well. And if you listen, you're the Angels, you got to overpay. You have to overpay for arms. You got to get guys in. You're running out of prime years for Mike Trout. And
your best pitcher's a hitter, Meaney. Your best pitcher's a hitter. He's not even a pitcher. That's why you need to overpay for pitching. He's hitting 46 bombs. Your best pitcher's hitting 46 bombs a year, is winning the MVP.
All right, we'll get out of here on that note. We got some NHL stuff, some NHL picks, and some NHL props. Appreciate you, Tino. Thanks for taking the time here today, and we will talk a little bit more tomorrow. All right, keep her locked. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. We're going to switch gears, talk a little hockey here. Tino did give me some news about Le'Veon Bell, who has been released. He wasn't really doing a whole lot. I guess, Devonta Freeman didn't do anything really in the last game, but I suppose you could feel better if you have Freeman, and maybe that means Latavius Murray could be back here this week. But let's talk some shot props. Before we do, if you are new to sports betting and you want to learn to become maybe a better at FTNBets.com, we have you covered. We talk bankroll management, betting strategy in our premium Discord chat. You can get the betting tools, projections, analysis, picks, a whole lot more across every sport from everybody over at FTNBets.com for $49.99 a month. Use the promo code FTNTV for 15% off. That's every single month, FTNTV promo code for 15% off. Okay, so shot props, let's go. There's a lot of games here this evening in the NHL for shot props. These are my favorite 5, but we broke down everything over at Dangle Bet Selly over at FTNBets.com. It's a free show with myself and Eric Young. So Sam Bennett, Nick Suzuki, Pavel Buchnevich, Brent Burns, and Darnell Nurse. So Sam Bennett's one of our favorites. Let's just continue to ride this thing out, guys. He's hit 9 of his past 11 games, and this is a guy who is averaging 3.8 shots per game with the Florida Panthers since he was acquired last season. That's including postseason play as well. Nick Suzuki, 6 of 7 this guy has hit in shot prop land, and he's plus money, and he's been plus money in all of these 7 games. We didn't get it once, but we've gotten it in 6 of the 7. He's getting a lot of ice time, and the Rangers tonight, a team that's really struggled at 5-on-5 this season. They've given up a lot of chances, and they're not generating a lot themselves. I didn't really give any reasons besides Bennett has just been balling out, play this guy, but the Islanders are up at the top in terms of high danger chances allowed, shot attempts, and shots against. It's pretty weird. It's pretty average for an Islanders team. Part of it's the opponents they played. This is game number 13 in a row on the road to start the season, but the Islanders have allowed the most shots against at 5-on-5 per 60. So that's just a huge plus for Bennett here this evening. Brent Burns has hit. Brent Burns is like him or Timo Meyer. Like, these are guys that I always go to, and Brent Burns has hit in 9 of his past 11 games as well. Buchnevich is new. We haven't been given Buchnevich, but he's plus money. You can find him over at DraftKings William Hill. This is a guy that has hit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his past 7 games, getting a lot of ice time, and he's coming in red hot as well. He has 5 points in his last 3 games and a terrific matchup tonight against the Arizona Coyotes. These guys are absolutely atrocious. They're hurting. They're like negative 33 goal differential. They've been absolutely brutal all year long. And then the final guy that we have on here is Darnell Nurse. Now, I like this game quite a bit. There's a lot of different ways that you can go between the Jets and the Oilers. Darnell Nurse has just been pretty consistent. He's among the leaders in ice time. That's why I lean him over Zach Hyman, but I still like Zach Hyman. I like Pierre-Luc Dubois on the other side. Books have adjusted with Kyle Connor. He's now like heavily juiced at over 2.5, which is really not worth it unless you're putting him in a big parlay, or at 3.5 at plus money. I've even seen 4.5. So it's time to kind of get away from him. But his center, Pierre-Luc Dubois, has been good. But for Darnell Nurse, this is a guy that gets 25 to 26 minutes every single night. He's got 47 shots. He's inside the top 12 in shot attempts at 5-on-5 per 60. For a defenseman, that's pretty solid. This guy's hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of his last 11 games. So just like Brent Burns, this is a guy who shoots the puck quite a bit. I have a whole lot more over at FTNBets.com. Again, use that promo code FTNWins. I just noticed, George, the GOAT next to Nick Suzuki. I just noticed that. That's not me doing that, although I always tell George, like, Suzuki. Hey, Suzuki's plus 130 for 2.5 shots, 3 shots. Get in on Suzuki. Man, he is the GOAT. He's pretty good. But there's a lot of other plays. Go check out the show. It's free. We're giving away betting packages over there. If you just subscribe, rate, review, show us that you were subscribed at the Eric Young, at Chris Meaney, meanstreetsftn@gmail.com. You can listen to the show for free. It is available on your favorite listening platforms. But I also had guys like Tarasenko in there, Svechnikov, Aho, Theodore. A lot of great shot prop opportunities today with 11 games on the ice. All right, one more break. We'll come back. We'll give some picks, some NHL picks, and a couple parlays as well. Keep it locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here one final time. So 11 games on the ice and a lot of massive favorites here in the NHL, but this is what I'm thinking. Florida against the Islanders. I mentioned the long 13-game road trip, and they just played last night in Tampa Bay. Florida already crushed them earlier in the year. They're heavily juiced, though, as are the Rangers against the Canadiens. It does sound like Jonathan Drouin's going to play, but Jake Allen, they're down to their third-string goalie, and Montembeault for Montreal. I know the Rangers haven't been great 5-on-5, but the Habs lead the league in time shorthanded, and they have the league worst penalty kill at Rangers power play. They got a lot of lethal guys on there. So I think, both of these teams in a parlay make it worth your while at plus 151. You got the Blues here against Arizona, puck and a half here to win by 2 goals. Normally don't give these plays, but Arizona, they're way worse than I thought. I mean, I thought a negative 33 goal differential. They're actually negative 37. They're 113-1, and the Blues already crushed them earlier this season. I like Carolina at minus 125 against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights are inside the top 5 and high danger chances allowed, scoring chances allowed, shot attempts allowed, and shots on goal. And it's the opposite for Carolina. This is a team that drives a lot of offense. They generate the most high danger chances at 5-5 per 60, and the Golden Knights give up the most. I'm sure they'll turn that around with Mark Stone back in the lineup here, but they're still missing a lot of guys. And Robin Leonard's not playing all that good. Max Pacioretty, William Karlsson still sidelined. So I'm jumping on the Hurricanes. The Ducks have won 7 straight. They got a matchup against the Capitals. We've been riding this out over at FTNBets.com. Plus money, plus 120. Let's do it. And then Edmonton and Winnipeg over 6.5. I think we'll see a lot of offense there. So again, the promo code for you if you want to be part of the FTN fam is FTNTV for 15% off all the picks across every sport. Any questions, hit me up at Chris Meaney. And good luck on the ice, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.